Welcome to TrulyFit, the online fitness marketplace connecting pros and clients through unique fitness business software.
Jamie, thanks so much for joining the TrulyFit Podcast. Why don't you give my listeners and the audience a background on who you are and what you do in health and fitness?
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. I'm really excited to be here talking about Solidcore. I am a Solidcore instructor, senior master coach with them. I moved to New York about 3 years ago, and that kind of like kickstarted my whole fitness career. I'm now CPT certified. I started working with some smaller companies and then advanced to some bigger companies like F45, and then finally found Solidcore, which resonated with me on many levels. And as a dancer in a previous life and also in my life now, it was a great way to kind of keep my body sustainable and connect with a whole bunch of different people. I kind of actually fell into Solidcore because I'd met somebody within my first couple of weeks of moving to New York, and they were like, you have to come try this workout, you have to come see what it's like. And after that, I kind of loved it and fell into it. So, yeah.
Well, we've had a lot of Pilates type conversations on this podcast. So even those trainers who aren't familiar with it do understand that there is a dancing background interconnected with Pilates. But I want to go backwards and ask you a personal question. Did you move to the States specifically for like a fitness career, or was this just like on a whim?
I was actually traveling on cruise ships for 4 years performing, and I actually knew I wanted to move to New York, and I was originally going to study here, but I was lucky enough to get the chance to get a green card. I won the green card lottery, which a lot of Americans don't know about, but a lot of people overseas know about. And yeah, so upon moving here, I kind of didn't really know where I wanted to be, but I knew I wanted to connect with people pretty quickly, and kind of fitness gave me that. I met so many people so quickly. I mean, I have amazing clients now, and when I started, people were so open. I mean, New York is one of those places people will welcome you with open arms because everyone's from somewhere. So yeah, that's kind of how I got over here. I say it's a very lucky chance.
Yeah, well, that's a cool story. I'm born and raised not too far from New York City. I worked in New York City, not in the health and fitness industry, but in other industries long before I transferred over to being a personal trainer. New York's not for me personally. It's its own beast.
It is.
There are people who love it, absolutely love it, and but like you said, it's very different because so many people from New York are not from New York, right? They're transplants, so it is a completely different feel than most cities. So let's get into it here. Can you give me a definition or a little a glimpse into what exactly Solidcore is? If you were describing it, let's say, to like your mother or grandmother, somebody who's not even in fitness, how would you describe it?
I think there's a word that goes around with everyone when they try Solidcore for the first time, and it's Pilates on steroids. We like to call it the strength training version of a Pilates class. I think there's a level of, in regular Pilates, of strengthening and lengthening. Those are kind of the words that get kind of tossed around when you think of Pilates. And I guess we kind of blow people's minds within the first seconds that they walk in and they hit a plank, and straight away you feel the tension build up in your core specifically, because we do focus so much on core, and the resistance is a lot heavier than a lot of other reformer machines. So we have redesigned the reformer machine from the original look. The springs start at that 8 pounds and then they go up from there. And then everything is kind of really focusing in on core movements, but then we go into legs and arms. Every day we have a different set of muscle groups, so you'll never kind of hit the same muscle group every single day, and the whole time you really are feeling some sort of core movement, whether it's the instability of the moving part of the machine known as the carriage, or whether it's just holding a body in truly a plank.
Do you call it something different because you made the Reformer unique, or do you guys still call it a Reformer?
No, we call it Svetlana. It was renamed, and we could say that it's your best friend. Svetlana is your best friend. You run up the whole machine, and yeah.
Cool, I like it. I know there's a gentleman, Kai Evans, who for a while was trying to do something similar, and he had made a machine called the X-Former, which again was similar in the fact that he added weight and changed a few things around to make it more of in a usable in a HIIT fashion. Because for those who don't know, like classical Pilates is typically done very slow. There's a lot of cueing, and it is something that I don't want to say disagreed with, but when I used the Reformer, I used it with my clients in a strength training fashion because I had a strength training background. So I thought it was such a perfect piece of equipment where you can literally hit every muscle group and challenge anybody, because the stronger you are, you could actually start to take off weight, which people don't understand, and challenge people through little to zero weight rather than putting on more spring load in a different fashion. But we'll get to that. So walk me through your client experience. I walk through the door the first day. I go to the front desk and I say, I've never done anything like this before, and I want to join a class. How do what are my next steps here? Do you just let me go right in, or is there like an informational first?
So we usually chat with clients as soon as they walk in the door. Majority of our studios have very small kind of waiting rooms, and you can kind of see straight into the studio. The attraction is the Reformer machine. When you do walk into the studio, the lights are low. We have a blue light that kind of lights up the studio when we're in class. So it kind of gives you that Soul Cycle like Barry's feel. When we talk to a client, we kind of described that this is a strength training program. We've actually started to move away from saying we're Reformer Pilates and kind of start to develop the title of us being a strength training program. I think it's a little bit more accessible and appealing to a broader range of people. And truly that is the effects that we want you to feel when you come into class. And so we'll talk you through like what the experience is, that you will feel a whole different set of muscles that you've probably never felt before, that it is quite intense. People do get quite overwhelmed. And we want to let them know that, because I think, again, there's this like misconception of when you walk into this room, it's going to be traditional Reformer Pilates. And usually you'll touch base with the coach. Majority of coaches are always on mic, and they're floating in and out of the waiting room and into the studio. So there's usually a 15-minute changeover, and we don't have beginner classes. We don't have advanced classes. Everything is kind of open, that we as a coach should understand how to progress and how to regress movements and exercises, so it is accessible for so many classes. Yes, we do have a couple of foundation classes, and that's truly for people that are maybe a little older or maybe have injuries, that they just want to be really certain that this is where they should be and they want to feel really confident in the room. And we also do have advanced classes just because of how much we've grown over the last few years, that some of our clients truly have done 800 or more classes, and they just want like a real kick in the butt workout. So yeah, but we don't really advertise that. We do say that every class is accessible to anyone.
I think that's great. That was actually my next question. You beat me to it, to see if there was advanced classes or some sort of foundational class involved. I think it's good both ways. It's good that you have that option sort of semi-privately for members who want a little bit more, because also you can charge more for those things. And it's good that you have instructors like yourself who are good enough to be in a class with, let's say, a 63-year-old woman who's never done it before, and a 21-year-old ballerina who can do this stuff all day long. So it's good that you have that. And we'll get to more of the personal training side of this after this, but I want to ask, what is the max class size? And are there, in that max class size, let's say 2 people show up, are you still going to have a class, or is there a minimum class size as well?
So we'll always have class even if we have 1 person in the studio. We will always have class. We always do ask that 1 person, if it is a singular person, do you want to take class? Because sometimes it is very overwhelming for someone. But majority of the time, our clients are very open to that. But usually our class sizes are 15 up, so we can fit 15 machines in a room, either in 1 single row or in 2 double rows. Right now, currently in New York, 25 machines is our largest studio, and which is, I think, the biggest of all of the studios we have across the country. We have 80 plus studios and growing. So yeah, you'll never get more than 25. Everyone has their own machine. You stay on that machine the whole time, which obviously coming out of COVID and still people being very aware of that is really nice. kind of safety net. People feel kind of more comfortable that they're using one machine, their own stuff, and you're not kind of interchanging weights and that sort of thing.
Talk a little bit about the routine, and you can use Pilates-esque jargon, and I will dumb it down for the audience who doesn't know it. Are you doing like footwork? Are you in the straps? Are you doing hundreds? Like, or you just, is this completely strength training on a reformer and you're not even using Pilates principles?
So we actually also changed the terms from original Pilates names.
Okay.
That just kind of fitted more with us. When you go through training at Solidcore, they do start you off learning all the different groupings. So we group it into core, obliques, legs, and upper body. Like I said before, every single day has a different focus. For example, yesterday you were doing center glutes, which is more glute maximus, and your back. So in that, you have to know all the different movements as a coach. If it's a glute day, for example, we're doing heavy squats. We'll use the heaviest spring. We're using that full range of motion. We also use variations within a squat, whether it's like a hold at halfway or a pulse. And then we take other movements like lunges. Lunges are kind of our most versatile move. We can either do it at the back, where you're resisting against the springs, at the front of the machine, where you've got the spring to either support you, or you take off all the springs and you have kind of nothing, and it's just that free movement of the carriage. And that's kind of like one of our base moves. If we go back to core is always the start of every single class. It's the best way to warm up the body. It's the best way to kind of get everything engaged, the trunk. If you start with a plank, you can move through a bunch of variations. Our two most versatile moves would be a crunch. So where you're contracting, you're kind of rounding out that spine. That can be done either on toes or on knees as a regression. And then we have an extension where you go on the plank and you press away from the machine. So if you're on the platform, you're moving away with the carriage. If you're facing the opposite direction, you're pushing the carriage away. So we say that there's like 4 sides to the machine. You're either moving with the carriage or away from the carriage. And yeah, so they're kind of our foundations, and that's kind of how we learn as a coach. You'll start with a base amount of moves, and then as you progress year, 2 years as a more experienced coach, we start to layer in some more advanced moves that are better for coaches who have the knowledge and can teach it.
Sure, makes sense. Yeah, and for anybody again who's listening who still doesn't really understand what the reformer is, and you're just a general personal trainer and don't have an idea, the best way I can describe it is you can lay supine or prone, but let's say you're supine. There's a bar where your feet are on, and you're pushing backwards off of that bar. That's a standard movement in the so-called squat, and returning. And why I find it very interesting, especially now that things are changing with knees over toes, is that you're going knees over toes over that bar majority of the time when you're squatting down. Now, your gravity is not working against you because you're lying flat on your back as opposed to having weight on your back, right? So you're controlling the weight better. But there's been this long kind of nonsense theory where you should never go knees over toes in a squat, but in Pilates you're always doing that. And it's almost like in a rehabilitory fashion where I find a lot of my older clients in the 50s and 60s and 70s that have knee problems, it really helps build up the quad muscles and gets them over potential knee injuries. So I think it is something good for people who do have issues with their knees, because again, you're working not against gravity with heavy weight on your back.
Yeah, so we actually took away from the original reformer machine the bar that kind of like sits above. So now we have like kind of 3 platforms, 2 on the ends, which are stationary, and 1 in the middle that moves. We work a lot in
like a jump board.
No jump board.
No jump board.
It is just fully 1 platform.
Okay.
We have handlebars on both sides, just kind of give you a more visual look of what the machine is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a little less built up compared to some of the original reformers. Sure. And then we do a lot of outer glute, center glute work. When we focus in, if you see like a muscle calendar, for example, which we have every single day, a different muscle grouping, and then within the calendar we have a certain focus. For example, January maybe push muscles for upper body, and lower body as a center glute focus. We work a lot with inner thighs, outer thighs, glute max, so center glute. And then we'll do what's known as a leg wrap. So we'll do outer and inners together, which is great for that stabilization of the knee. We don't work a lot in quads. This was just kind of how, when they originally designed the program, we don't really have like a quad day. We kind of took that away to work more posterior chain. And then with upper body, there'll be bicep, tricep, shoulder day, an arm wrap day, which is either push or pull muscles. What did I forget? And back and chest.
I think for people who might give this a try, you need to understand that this could also just be an accessory thing. So it sounds like what you're saying is you are working full body, more or less. You can go there 3 days a week and make it your individual workout like you could any other like F45 or some sort of boot camp. But also for people who want to make it an accessory workout, maybe you lift heavy and you lift Olympic lifting, but you're not getting those small muscles, right? You're not focusing. Yeah. Well, it looks like you can look up what's going on in Solidcore for the month and go, this is a good month for me. I can start working some of those smaller muscles.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that kind of was what attracted me quickly to Solidcore. Was when I moved to New York, I had been recovering from a hip displacement injury, and it was from overdoing my HIIT workouts. I was going 6 to 7 days a week. I loved it. I loved that feeling of like my heart rate being up and sweating like crazy. But my body wasn't sustaining it because I didn't have the strength or the muscles to kind of hold my pelvis in place. And I remember going to my physio and he's like, you have literally no core muscles. Like your pelvis is moving every time you're jumping. Like this impact is, affecting you hugely. And kind of when I fell into Solidcore, I was like, wow, like there's all these muscles in the core and that core stability that I do not have. And it kind of changed the game for me. And now, like when I look at my week, I really don't try and make every single day a cardio day. But if I do go to a top cardio day, I can still do a Solidcore class because you're working such like refined muscle groupings. You're not going crazy and impacting the joints or stressing out, your any part of the skeletal system. So I think that's what is so brilliant about the workout, and also with people who are fitness orientated or working out so much.
It's funny how one of the best things that can ever happen to a trainer is to get injured. I say this all the time. I don't wish it upon anybody, but having injuries, having surgeries, not only are you able to then work with clients who have that same injury or same surgery and go, hey, I've been through that. Let me walk you through what I did. But it also allows you to take a step back and go, hey, this is a lifelong game. Like I can't do this shit anymore. I have to like slow down and really worry about my body long term. And I loved how you said, your pelvis was out of whack and you have to strengthen. A lot of trainers, especially young trainers, think that stretching is the answer when that's just a band-aid, right? If you have SI joint issues or pelvis issues, when you start working with physical therapists, physios, and learning a little bit more, no, it's about strengthening and keeping things in place. The stretching is secondary, and it's not saying you shouldn't be flexible, but that is not going to solve the problem of your pelvis. That's just a band-aid.
Totally. And I mean, like that was the other thing when I did my hip displacement injury, I lost all range of motion in my hamstring. And as being a dancer, like forever, I've been able to like kick my face and there'd be no problems. And all of a sudden I couldn't even like get my leg to a place that I could be functional and moving and the thing that I love doing so much. And again, when I asked my physio, I was like, I'm stretching this hamstring, but I cannot get it to go where it used to go. And again, he reiterated to me, like, stretching is not the key for you right now. Like, you need to build up that strength, that foundation, and everything will be kind of aligned again. And then you can go back to doing, everything that you want to do. So, and like you said, like being relatable as a coach is like, number one, the biggest thing. Like I have so many clients ask me after class, like, I've got this going on, that going on. And not that a coach should be a physiotherapist, like you shouldn't be giving the advice, but I think to be relatable and say, hey, I understand what you're going through and it is difficult, but you are in a safe environment. The strengthening that you're doing is safe for your body. And then a lot of people do go away and, seek medical advice. And usually more often than not, that medical advice tells them to come and take Pilates classes and strength classes.
Yeah. Not to be totally self-promotional here, but if people are interested in learning more about why, let's say, you should be strengthening instead of stretching, we have an episode with Dr. Bobby of Impact in Baltimore. He's a physical therapist, and he talks about how, he'll have clients come in who are athletes who strain their hamstring. And my first question was naively like, okay, how long do you wait? And he's like, we don't wait at all. He's like, I find some sort of strength exercise they can do, whether it's a double leg glute bridge or something. I want to get those muscles firing and get the blood flow to there right away. So I think things are changing in the fitness industry. They always do. And we have to continue to learn and understand that it's where we thought things were going. In some directions, things have changed, and we got to continue to learn. And even me, having no idea, if I pulled my hamstring tomorrow, I would have rested for a week. And now I know that that's not what I should be doing.
Totally. I mean, that activation before you do something like running is so important. Like for me, like I'm a big Soul Cycle fan. I love taking Soul. But sometimes like I have to go to a Solidcore class first and do a center glute day where my glutes are firing, because sometimes I get into Soul and my hips like just taking over everything. My quads take over everything, and I can't fire that posterior chain, which is so important when you're cycling. And again, like when you're running, like activation is so important before you go ahead and do that movement.
Yeah, it's great you said that. I have so many people who ask me, both trainers, but really general population, what muscles does this movement work? And I'll say, it depends on the person, right? If you, like, people can squat. I can have a client squat all day long and another client squat all day long. And the next day, somebody's telling me their butt hurts. And the next day, someone's telling me their quads hurt, right? Because somebody's quad dominant and somebody's, posterior dominant. And it just depends on how you're built. It could be your Q angle of your hips. I mean, there's so many different factors that go on. So we have to teach our clients, and that's what Pilates does a very good job of how to engage certain muscles where you should be focused on. And if you're not feeling it here, here's a potential switch, a foot angle or something else that can get you into the proper position so those muscles are firing.
Totally. Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about becoming a Solidcore instructor. What did it take for you to become one? If somebody wants to become one, what is the interview process like?
Mm-hmm. I will say, for me, it was a little different to some people. Again, like I said earlier on, I had met someone through a dance class, and she was a Solidcore instructor, and she referred me to the person who was the training manager at the time. And they kind of followed up pretty quickly. I got an interview with them. Usually what you do is you'll take a class where they kind of like assess, your strength, if you have knowledge, the way you take on information, and then you'll usually have a verbal interview straight after. I had that. I actually went into the class before I had my interview, which actually served me very well, because that person who I took class with was the manager, and we kind of got chatting after class, and she went back to the training manager and was like, this girl is really lovely, like definitely give her that interview. So I 100% totally suggest, like if there is somewhere you want to work, the best thing to do is take class. Like I have met so many people just from class hopping, meeting different coaches, just engaging with a conversation, even like someone you're sitting next to in a class, like whether it's a Soul class or you're working out at F45 as a Barry's, you just don't know where these people are in the industry. And even people you think are just clients, sometimes they are managers or people that are hiring or, looking to build a new studio. So yeah, that's kind of my story. I kind of fell into it, and I was very lucky to be hired straight away after my interview process. And then we went into a month and a half of training. So we would spend 3 days a week training, learning about all the different sections. They usually break it up over 6 weeks, learning about the different parts of the machine, and then kind of diving into different exercises for different muscle groupings. Within those weeks, yes, you're training for 3 days for 5 or 6 hours with a training manager, but during the week they do ask you to take class, do the classes. All the different coaches have different styles. I think that's a really nice thing to add about Solidcore is, even though everyone is kind of learning the same base skills, everyone teaches so differently. And they really do ask you to bring your own flavor, bring your own, music and the way that you like to speak, whether it's, you know, some people have like crazy amount of energy and they just got to get that out in a class. Other people have a lot of knowledge about the body and they want to give you the information. So they do really ask you to bring that, but also still keep to kind of the base model that is Solidcore.
So they have the programming they're giving you, but they allow you as the individual instructor to spice it up, to put different music to it, to maybe put a little twist on it so that you can grow as an instructor and find out who you are as a person.
Exactly. And they also, like, I mean, with our classes, because of the dark lights, because of the music that's a little bit more up tempo than a normal reformer class, we do have that energy of, you know, maybe you're in soul, maybe you're in Barry's, that same kind of hype energy, but you're on the mic as a coach and instructing, still teaching them, you know, the cues, the base movement, why it affects the body, how it affects the body, things that you don't want to do to make sure that the body is in a safe position. And then again, you have free reign as to how you explain that.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said when you first started off that answer, and being inside of those classes is very important for, I mean, some obvious reasons. You know exactly what they're doing, so you're a step ahead. If you want to become an instructor, you understand the movements. So then number two, you're hearing the other instructors cue the movements, so you know what sort of cueing they use, which you may have to use similar cueing, right? But also, like you said, you never know where your golden ticket is. So there could be that one handshake you have, the person who's sitting next to you on the next reformer or on the next yoga mat could be that person to help you. And they're more likely to be that person to help you in the industry if they're inside fitness, right? Could you meet that person at the grocery store, at the bar? Sure. But you're more likely to meet that person inside of the fitness industry. That's why you have to get to these classes. And you know what? You're not the only one who said that. The last two people I've talked to via podcast who have similar jobs had gone to the classes, they had met someone, and they had a little bit of an in the interview process where they didn't get the interview because of that, but they felt more comfortable, and they had a few people sort of like giving them the rah-rah, which helps in turn push you to the front of the line.
Totally. And I mean, like, because of that experience that I had and being referred, I have actually done that for multiple coaches now. On my end, people have asked me, you know, what do you think? How do you like working here? And, you know, I always give them the information, the knowledge, I give them the emails, and I'm always more than happy to be a reference. But again, I can't do that unless you're in my class and I know you personally. So I think it's super important. Like, if you are trying to grow in the industry, like, meet the coach, like, say hi, because the majority of people are so willing to meet you and want to know you, and will embrace you with open arms if you have questions.
Yeah, we're literally in an industry where the whole goal is to help people. So people want to help you. And I would also say, I don't know if it would work in your facility, but in general, shadowing is really important. And I push that in my book, Fitness Business 101. If you're a trainer, and you could go to a gym and just say, hey, you don't need to pay me. I just want to come for 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day and watch your trainers and see what they do and walk around. I mean, you could learn so many life skills from these trainers that you'll never learn in the certification program just by shadowing a few hours a week. And then also you have that sort of like, I call it like the cognitive dissonance with the business. They've watched you watch their trainers and learn their way. So eventually they want to hire you. They don't want you going somewhere else because now you've learned everything that they've taught you. And if they're teaching you the things that they believe in, then that means they believe in you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, also, like, you know, having been a trainer in New York for the last 3 years, I will say New York has a different vibe, and people are, you know, here for the hustle, and it's a different clientele as well. And I think the important thing is, like, you've got to know the people that you're teaching to, and you've got to know what they respond to. And if you're not on the other end and being the client, like, how do you know how it feels as a coach? And how are they going to respond to the way you're speaking to them if you don't do the class and learn the things?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think understanding your clientele, it's going to be different if you're in, you know, Nowheresville, Missouri, or if you're in the center of, you know, Chelsea. You have to know your clientele and act appropriate. So you talked a little bit about the trainers having their own personality. So I assume this answer is yes, but I'll ask it anyway. Are you modifying movements on your own during the classes?
Yeah, so when we get taught the series of exercises, we get shown the modification and the amplification. For example, in core, toes is obviously the hardest place to be. If you're in a plank, it's elbows and toes. If you have tightness through the shoulders, it would be hands and toes to take some of that pressure off. And then if you need that regression, it would be to be on elbows and knees. We give those 3 options. We also show ways to kind of amplify. So for example, you're in an elevated move, you're on handlebars, your toes are on the moving surface, the carriage. And we want to push someone who's done 50 plus classes. We would then say, okay, combine this move. We're doing the crunches, but put in a push-up, alternate the movement, go slower. Maybe you take the toes back a little further on the carriage. So rather than being where the resistance is a little lighter, walk your toes back so it gets heavier. We then also have integrated classes. So the amount of classes you've taken, you change your springs. So for example, if you're under 25 classes, you start off on 1 white spring, which would be like 8 pounds. If you've done 25 or more classes, then you're on a gray spring, which is double that weight. If you've done 50 or more classes, then you're on a gray and a white spring, which is triple that weight. So we always kind of give that, this is the foundation, this is the next stepping stone, this is the next step stone. And it's a really nice way for clients to kind of get excited about like, okay, I'm at 25 classes, I'm trying to push to 50 classes. I actually had a really lovely client last night. It was her 50th class and she was so excited. She'd messaged me on Instagram and she'd been telling me all week. And so she got in that studio and I'm like, now's your time, you're getting that extra spring today. And after class, it was like this feeling of accomplishment that I've now gone up on weight, it's now harder, and I'm excited to like see where I go with this next process. And again, we learn all this stuff through the training model, because again, this training model is not similar to anything else that you kind of learn through a certification or at another studio. We have our own model.
I think it's great what classes do, much like yours, other studios do it, where you're working towards something, you're working towards that extra spring, you're working towards your 50th class, you get the t-shirt, whatever it is. It's very hard to replicate that in personal training, but I think it is important that trainers try to do that in some way, some respect, because you can see how well it works with these classes and how people buy in. And we have long-term goals with our clients, right? Whatever that long-term goal is. Sometimes we don't, sometimes it's just overall general health and wellness, but to have those short-term sort of objective goals to get to is really motivating and keeps your client on those next steps.
Totally. I will say, I mean, a part of the training that we do learn is to know the client's names, because our class sizes kind of started under 15 and some of the classes are under 25. As a coach, you should be seeing the people that are coming back, the new clients, making sure that they feel welcome and trying to get them into their second class, because usually first class experience isn't everybody's favorite, including myself. My first class was like, this is horrible, but wonderful at the same time. And then you should be knowing those clients that have the injuries, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a level of like personal training that we kind of bring to a group fitness model, and they do ask, like, within every section you should be saying every single client's name at least twice, and that was something different in training that I'd never experienced teaching anywhere else, and they're really adamant about that. Like when you have your evaluations and when you have if you're progressing from 1 year to 2 years and you're moving up as a coach, they are so onto you about that. Like you have to be saying those clients' names, because it makes those clients feel valued in the room. It makes them feel seen. It makes them know that you know what they're going through. And for example, Sophia has a bad ankle and you're saying, make sure your knee's right over top of your ankle for this lunge, because we want to take that pressure off that Achilles tendon, off that ankle. And you say Sophia's name whilst you're saying that person is responding and go, oh yeah, she's talking to me. I know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes it feel like a true private group class where the people also know each other, not just the trainer knows the instructor, but the people know each other. Wherein, let's say you go to a yoga class with 30 people, you sit down in your mat in your normal slot, you never talk to anybody. I've been to a yoga class once a week for a year and I don't know anyone's name outside of the instructor's name, right? So it is good to have those private group class settings, especially if you're going to be charging more. People expect a little bit more, and that interpersonal connection is is that little bit more that they're paying for.
Definitely. And I mean, that's another thing, like we usually have a 10-minute kind of period before the class starts. So our classes are 50 minutes, but there's a 10-minute window where we ask clients to be there 10 minutes before class, whether that's just their time to get settled, put away their phones, stretch out anything that's niggling them. And then we also take that time after we have, as a coach, done our demonstration to be like, hey, turn to your neighbor and tell them your favorite movie that you watched this week. And like that one conversation that person had just has made a complete connection between two people. But also then in class, you can then refer like, hey, that person next to you is feeling exactly what you're feeling. That tension that is building up in your core, hey, that person is going through the same thing. Why not try to make that next rep happen? Even though you feel like you want to break now, you want to take that breath, but the person next to you is feeling the same thing. So do it together kind of thing. So again, it makes a really nice, like interconnected group fitness setting.
What are some of the perks that you have as an employee? Do you get free classes? What do you get?
Yeah. So, I mean, classes at Solidcore as a coach, you can come and take class. We are very much in demand at the moment, so classes do fill up. So it's only if there's like a spot available.
Sure.
You can jump into class, and truly, like, coaches love when other coaches take their classes, because then we can use you as, hey, look at Rob in the middle doing a lunge. Notice how his body's forward, his knees in this position. And we can use you as kind of like a person to look at when other people around you maybe aren't quite connecting with the form or not connecting to what you're saying. They can see it as a visual. So for me, like, I love it when coaches come and take my class. It's so fun. But we also get the perks of going to other studios. So we have a free class between Soul Cycle. So Soul Cycle coaches can come to us. We can go to them. Barry, same thing.
Wow.
Another company, Tone House, Y7. What am I forgetting? There's so many that we have connected with, which is great. Again, another way to meet more people in the industry, meet other coaches, meet other clients at different studios. And yeah, I have made so many friends in the industry and have loved every second of it. And I think that's truly one of the biggest perks of working for the company.
Yeah, I talked about this on, I forget which, the latest podcast, but you don't know who in that industry interconnections that you're going to potentially need or benefit from. Need's a bad word, right? Because you're not using people. You're making those connections, but who could really help you down the road? So for all you know, 10 years from now, Bobby from F45, who you let take your class, owns this big company, and he wants to have you be their master trainer or whatever, and come on and represent their company, right? So I think it's really important to network. And also, people always try to network up. I don't. I try to network with the people who are on my same level, and you want to grow with them. And as they grow, you grow, and you help each other out. Because guess what? If I'm a brand new personal trainer, which I'm not, but if I was 21 and I just got my certification, and I reach out to like some golf professional or Pilates professional who's 42 and has been in the industry for years, they're going to be less likely to probably interconnect with me. But if I meet another 21-year-old who just became a Pilates instructor or just became a Solidcore instructor, they will want to network with me. So it's important to also try to maybe network sort of commensurate with your ability.
Totally, 100%.
So what is different? I feel like we've hit on this 10 times accidentally, but what could you say is different that comes to mind between Solidcore and some of the other facilities you just named, Barry's and F45, all these things? What really stands out that's different?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on a few of these things, but that kind of private training in a group fitness setting is a huge thing. That low impact, high intensity. So you come in, you're sweating, you're still feeling all the feels like you would in a HIIT class, but the impact is not going to be as great as doing 20 burpees and your knees and your hips, and you're a little safer. That interconnection between coaches, clients, and clients. And then just really kind of like that 50 minutes of fully moving the whole time. For example, if you go to F45 class, you have those breaks, those time to kind of breathe, drink of water. We really try and make sure that from the minute that we start to the 50 minutes ends, you are moving the whole time. And we kind of create this feeling of hustling between exercises. You're going from your crunch to your extension. Do you need that break to like go between those two movements, or can you go straight into it? Can you make your core stay under tension for 10 minutes? Like, these are the kind of challenges that we're trying to create within the class as a coach. And I think, again, is different from other group fitness. And we use the term like time under tension. The more time you stay under tension, for the longer amount of period of time, you're going to feel more from those muscles, that muscular failure.
Something that just came to mind, I forgot to ask you, is what are the accessories, or are there none, that you're using in conjunction with the Reformer, like in, standard Pilates, like a short box, long box or something? Are you using accessories, or are you doing everything on your built Reformer?
So we have like I said before, the platform, the carriage, which is kind of the base model. You have your handlebars where you can do more elevated moves, like incline moves. We have a set of dumbbells as well, which is great for transition periods. For example, if you're coming out of obliques and you're going into upper body, it's kind of, we need that time to transition as a coach. If it's like a multiple spring load that needs to go on, we as a coach will change it out for clients. So they can keep moving, so they're not spending so much time changing springs and getting to the next movement. Again, we're trying to use up every single minute in class moving. And then we also have cables. So we have cables, 2 sets of cables, ones that we can use when we're standing, ones where we can use when we're seated on the carriage or kneeling on the carriage. And they're kind of like that feeling when you go to the gym and you use the cable machine and you're doing a bunch of different upper body movements. We use that for upper body. The standing cables, we can use that for upper body as well as lower body, like those heavy movements like deadlifts and step ups. And yeah, they're kind of our like additional. We also have one other thing known as our bungee. I call it either everybody's best friend or worst nightmare. It's kind of feels like a resistance band, but super heavy. And we use it for center glute day or hamstring day. So there has a loop on it. You put it on your foot, you press it to either the ceiling, or you do it with a straight leg and you again press it to the ceiling. So you get tension either glutes or hamstrings. And again, it's everyone's either worst nightmare or best friend.
Where are you guys located specifically in New York City? I'm, from the area, so I know it well.
So we have several different studios within Manhattan. We have Chelsea, which is on 23rd, which is where I usually am. Nomad Studio, West 57th, Soho, Nolita. We also have one in Dumbo, one in Williamsburg, one in New Jersey.
Where in New Jersey, do you know?
New Jersey City, I'm not completely sure. They're kind of they're actually separate from the New York based studios. They're kind of slightly separated. But then we have 80 plus studios around the country. So we kind of expanded on the East Coast. And then now we're kind of doing our invasion into the West Coast. So we have a bunch of studios popping up on the West Coast, Seattle, LA, San Fran. So yes, definitely if you're on the West Coast, keep your eyes out because we're making our invasion, as we call it.
That is super exciting. Jaime, this was fantastic information. Let us know where we can find more about Solidcore, and then you personally tell us about if we have trainers who have maybe questions about Solidcore or about things that you do and they want to find you, please let us know where we can find more about you.
Totally. So like I said before, I'm always at Chelsea. I am a senior master coach now. So I actually bop around a bunch of different studios, but Chelsea is my home base. It's on 23rd Street and 7th Avenue. Always there. Come and talk to me. I'm always more than happy to talk to people. You can also find us on the Equinox Plus app. So we actually took what we do on Reformers and moved it across to Sliders, so you can do at-home classes. So if you have the Equinox Plus app or you're an Equinox member, go ahead, look at our content. It is very similar to the content that we do on Reformers. Great way to learn the base moves as well. So if you don't have access to a studio that's close by, again, use the app. You'll see myself on there and 8 other brilliant coaches. And yeah, if you're trying to find me or reach out to me, definitely hit me up on Instagram. Again, my name is Jaime Foord, Jaime Foord. My parents had to make it hard, so watch the spelling of my name. And yeah, 100%, we are more than happy to reach out. If you are trying to reach out to a Solidcore coach, the best ones to kind of reach out to are the senior master coaches or the pro coaches, just because we've been around for a little bit longer. We have more information to provide you with, and we also have more connections with the upper corporate level. Yeah.
My guest today has been Jaime Foord. Jaime, thanks for joining the TrulyFit Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.